There's this perceived notion of what we think our business does. And then there's reality of what is actually happening within our business. And so I think that a lot of folks, they look at referrals wrong, and not just they don't define it correctly. They also confuse other terminology like word of mouth with
Mhm.
referrals. Those are two totally separate things. You have to have a couple of components to actually be a referral. And then they kind of look at it from that perspective of they feel like referrals even fit within marketing. I'm like, they don't.
One of the questions I love asking my coaching clients is how they get their business. And so many of them will brag and say it's about referrals and word of mouth. And then when you start drilling down, you realize very quickly they don't always really understand what a referral is. Not my guest. Stacey Brown Randall is the rock star of referrals. She is a podcast host. She has the best group training out there for developing systematic referrals. She is the author of Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. And she is a rock star. Take a listen in, find out. Do more by doing less. With me, Charles Alexander, for small business owners, startups, and busy folks. Look, how long have you been doing do you call it growth by referrals, or what is that still our name?
That's the actual signature program. That's the signature strategy, the signature program that I launched. It was the first one I ever did. We have 19 now. So technically it's just the name of one program or one training or one strategy that I teach. The overall name is Building a Referable Business. So we've evolved since your first interaction with us. I don't know how many years ago that was, but it's been a hot minute. But yeah, so it's Building a Referable Business, and Growth by Referrals is just one of the overall strategies we teach, but it is one of the foundational ones.
Referrals are to me, I've been business coaching forever, and it's one of the far and away most misunderstood aspects of somebody's marketing. So I've got my whole other side business in addition to coaching that's explainer videos, and I'll talk to them. So how do you where's your business come from? And they immediately, and they'll smile real big. We've just built our business on word of mouth and referrals. And you start digging around a little bit and you realize, I don't think they know what referrals are.
This happens all the time. I think you probably wouldn't be surprised since you talk to business owners all the time like I do. There's this perceived notion of what we think our business does. And then there's reality of what is actually happening within our business. And so I think that a lot of folks, they look at referrals wrong, and not just they don't define it correctly. They also confuse other terminology like word of mouth with referrals. Those are two totally separate things. You have to have a couple of components to actually be a referral. And then they kind of look at it from that perspective of they feel like referrals even fit within marketing. I'm like, they don't. Marketing is its own leg of your sales stool. Prospecting is its own leg of your sales stool, but referrals needs its own equal leg. It can't be the short leg. It's got to be an equal leg with marketing and prospecting. And that makes up a three-legged stool within your sales strategy. Most people they just really think of sales as like it's two legs. It's prospecting and marketing, and referral fits into one of them. And I'm like, nope, it is everything you do, everything you say, all the strategies you'll deploy should be very different from marketing and prospecting. So it's a three-legged stool. So yeah, not only the definition, but just like where it fits in my business and what I believe about referrals inside my business. People usually, sad to be the bearer of bad news, don't typically have correct.
I'm going to hit pause real. Tell us in plain English, before we start asking about how do we generate a referral system, what do you define as a referral?
Yeah, it's such a great foundational place. Let's make sure we're all on the same page with a referral. So we define a referral as having two main components. And it's all based on why referrals are so awesome. Referrals are so awesome because it's like a new potential client is basically being dropped right into your lap, right? They are typically less price sensitive. They're usually quicker to close, easier to close. They trust you because they are borrowing the trust from the person who's telling them that they should hire you. That's why we love to get prospects that are referred to us, which means the definition has to be based on that. And the definition of a referral is, number one, there's got to be a personal connection. There actually has to be your referral source, which is what we call the person who refers people to you. So your referral source has to actually connect you to the prospect. Typically, in most professional services type settings, this is going to be done over email, but not always. It could be done over a group text thread. And the second thing it's got to have is there's got to be a need identified in the prospect. Like, this is the piece that people miss, because sometimes they're like, oh, I know all these people who need you. And I'm like, well, do those people know they need me? Because
Right.
no one's going to buy if they don't know they have a problem, or they can know they have a problem and be like, I am not interested in solving my problem. Thank you very much.
It'd be like trying to send an overweight uncle in to see a personal fitness trainer when he thinks he looks great.
Yeah, okay, I've never used that example, but yes, that is
You can borrow it.
excellent. So
Yeah.
it's that need identified. The prospect recognizes that they have a need. And it's when you have somebody who says, hey, I got a problem. I'm willing to fix it. Now, who do I need to talk to? Oh, Charles, I trust you to tell me who should fix it.
Right.
That is our definition of a referral. Personal connection, need identified, and the prospect.
So how do I go about getting more of the referral sources? Because that sounds like, so when most folks, when they think they're building referrals, and I know your big thing is being able to build referrals without having to go out and just beat people over the head with it, but is to, they think they're just asking anybody if you need my service, but you're telling them to get a referral source. How do they build some referral sources?
Yeah, so we define a referral source as the person, it's always a human, that is going to refer potential clients to you. Now, as you know, because you've been in my program in the past, I am a contrarian to 99.9% of how most people teach referrals.
Mm-hmm.
And I teach that you generate referrals with what we call naturally, which means naturally doesn't mean we don't do anything. It just means we do it without manipulating. We do it without incentivizing. We do it without feeling like you've got to network all the time and be seen all the time and be in a ton of different leads groups. And we also do it without wasting time. And definitely we do it without having to ask for them. So when you ask the question, hey, how do I get some referral sources? How do I get people who've never referred me to start referring me? There's a whole process behind that, because we're never going to sit down with someone over coffee and say, hey, Charles, so great to meet you. Now, who can you send my way? I stalked your LinkedIn connections and I'd like for you to connect me, right? Or refer me to these 16 people. Like, nobody wants to do business like that. But that
people
is what
will do business like that, and it's horrifying.
Well, right. And most people will get up and be like, just kidding, not going to help you anymore.
Yeah.
And so, and the reality of it is, but that's how we've been taught for decades and decades and decades. Like, every time someone's like, oh, have you heard this new way to get referrals? I'm like, let me guess. It's just a new way to do the old thing we've been doing for forever, but the same premise is there. And so we believe in understanding the science behind referrals and protecting relationships above all else. But that doesn't mean you can't understand then how to generate referrals. But getting someone who's never referred you to start referring you, it's not something that's going to happen with one conversation. There's a trust factor that has to be built up. The fact that they have to even come across ideal people to refer to you, right? That matters as well. And I think that's the piece that people miss, is like, this isn't just like, hey, I met a bunch of people and now they should all refer me. You may deserve referrals, but you certainly aren't owed them. So you have to figure out who should be referring you. And before you actually even consider that they're going to refer you, you're probably going to have to put them first, which means when we teach someone how to cultivate a new referral source, we typically take a little bit longer and it goes a little bit slower. But it's like I tell my clients, when it hits and the snowball starts, it will start to compound itself very quickly. But we're not hitting anyone over the head saying, hey, give me some referrals, give me some potential new clients.
So let's use me as an example. That way I can get free advice and pretend I'm doing a podcast. So I want to teach people to do more by doing less. I know that there are a ton of people who have that need. I know there are a ton of referral sources out there. Some of them sort of know me, like me, some may not so much. What are the things that I need to be looking for out of the gate? I mean, this isn't the old Chet Holmes, get the Dream 100 together and start stalking them and giving them things necessarily. What does your process look like?
Yeah, so it does start with identification.
Okay.
Right? I mean, that is truly what's going to matter. I always say when people, so the strategy that we use to teach people how to turn clients and contacts into referral sources, we call it referring machines. And what we teach inside that training is that you do have to identify the right people. But what I want people to understand is that in some cases, you may be kissing some frogs before you find your princes and your princesses that will ultimately be able to refer you. So we don't ever guarantee that, hey, talk to 5 people and those 5 people want to refer you. because humans don't fit in a perfect little Excel spreadsheet. They're like squishy humans with a bunch of emotions and their own things that they've got going on. So we do teach, like, it's funny, I was on the phone earlier with somebody who's a real estate agent. And she was like, I just need people referring me. And she was like, I mean, like, how do I identify them? And what's funny for this is, like, you have referring machines. Have you gone through the program? She's like, I know, I need to go do that. I'm like, okay, let's start there. And I said, the very first thing we teach in that program is recognizing who's the best fit. Who's your ideal referral source? Not ideal as in there's only one type of person, but kind of overall, like, who's your ideal referral source? A lot of people don't think to look at their clients. Right? If you've got clients who have given you a testimonial or told you that they really loved working with you, there's potential there to cultivate them into a referral source. Maybe it's a center of influence who's never referred you before, but tried to help you, right? Has shown interest in helping you. Or it's someone that is downstream or upstream from your clients. So I always tell folks that there's always another business that is typically one step ahead of you with your ideal clients. We call it being upstream, right?
Gotcha.
So let me give you an example. When I was a business and productivity coach, I was always upstream from a bookkeeper, because I'm talking to clients about their productivity, right? About their business, about the things they probably need to outsource and delegate, and finances and bookkeeping high on the list, right? So I was always referring my business owner clients to a bookkeeper because I was upstream, right? So it's also recognizing who is upstream from you that is going to be having conversations and uncovering the pain points that their clients have, but they don't fix it. So they got to send it to somebody else. Most people won't take the time to sit down and identify who are your best potential referral sources, either by who they are, because there's a name, or the type of person they are. Like, for a bookkeeper to determine how many business and productivity coaches do I actually know and that I actually have a relationship with. So it's taking it from that stage and really spending time figuring it out. And we walk people through in our program, we walk people through understanding, how do you figure out who those people are? And sometimes it's commonalities and sometimes it's not. But most people they just miss the fact, I guess I should say, that there is some low-hanging fruit right there in front of you. You just haven't taken the time to consider it that, because most business owners want the easy button. They just do.
Sure.
Just like, tell me who should refer me. And I'm like, I got to understand some things first, and you're going to have to do some work. Now, the process we take our clients through and our referring machine and that proprietary training that we take our clients through is, once we've identified who should refer you, there is a whole process that we call running 5, keeping warm. That's the framework of, once you've identified them, how do you start them on this journey to actually start referring you? And that's our secret sauce, is like what it is, like, what are you doing? What are you saying? How are you planting referral seeds? And then how often are you actually following up with them as well?
So when I make my list, I just start beating them over the head relentlessly and asking for referrals and sending them Christmas cards and all that sort of stuff.
Charles, it's like you didn't even listen to what I just said. Come on.
Come on. I know better than that.
Yes, you do.
So even if you wanted to give away the secret sauce, there's not enough time. That's why your program is intensive and awesome. But give us some ideas. So let's say I'm Charles Alexander. I'm sitting down making a list. I've got my top 10 clients. I'm going to start integrating them as people that I want to hit up for referrals, centers of influence. That might be, let's say CPAs and insurers and financial advisors, people that deal with busy entrepreneurs, and then upstream, maybe other coaches who have a much higher ticket offer. Let's come back to that real quick. Downstream. We hit on the upstream. What does downstream look like?
Downstream is somebody usually that you're going to be referring to.
Got you.
Right. And sometimes it's not always going to be like this, right? So I'm upstream for when I was a productivity and business coach, I was upstream for a bookkeeper, right? I was upstream for them, but for me, they are downstream. So it's also paying attention that when you do have someone downstream for you, sometimes it's who you refer to. Sometimes it's just someone, they'll work with someone after they've worked with you. Those are still good relationships to have. Upstream, I think, are typically more productive, but you should always focus on the downstream ones as well.
So I've got my list: clients, centers of influence, upstream, downstream. What's some of the stuff I need to do other than do it? Because what most folks, Here's what most people will do, and correct me if you hear me being wrong. They'll get fired up. They've got their list of 50, 100, and they'll have a spreadsheet. And then starting on Monday, they'll LinkedIn message several, and they'll email several, and they'll ask several for that dreaded cup of Dunkin' so they can pretend to listen and then start begging them for referrals. They'll do it for 2 or 3 weeks, and they won't get an immediate response, and they'll say, oh, this doesn't work. People are too busy, flaky, narcissistic, insert excuse here, and then fall off the wagon. What do they need to do that looks differently?
Yeah. So the first thing you have to do is you got to shift your mindset, right? The reality of it is people believe that when they start taking action to make something happen in their business, the people on the receiving end should act accordingly. That's not their job.
Yeah.
That's not their job.
What I'm supposed to, and then you're not following along.
Right. Like, I'm trying to take you to coffee. Like, why won't you accept it? Because you know I'm then going to beat you over the head for referrals.
Why don't you give me $10,000? I bought you a $3 cup of coffee.
Why don't you put your reputation on the line and send someone to me, even though I'm only doing business, I don't know, like a hot minute, right? Like, the reality of it is that we have a preconceived notion that when we decide to start doing something and we're going to need somebody else to like finish the job for us, right? Like, I'm going to take you to coffee and I'm going to then need you to refer me. When we go in with that mentality, we get really annoyed pretty quickly when the other person doesn't act accordingly.
Sure.
And then the reality of it is, think about it when someone does that to you. When someone does that to me, I'm like, I don't even have time for you. Like, please do not send me an email and ask to pick my brain, because my answer is you may pay me for my brain. Like, now, 10 years ago when I started my business, I probably would have let you pick my brain. But it's like people just have this, they get into this mindset of like, hey, someone told me to create a spreadsheet. I've got these 50 people. What am I going to do? I'm going to go hit them up and they better do what I want right away. The truth is, I have worked with clients before. I'm going to give you this one example because I think it's going to, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what we do, but I think it paints the example perfectly. So I had an interior designer, deals in high-end homes, and had great clients that referred her. I had some great architects that referred her, but there was one in particular she wanted to start referring to her. There's a process I mentioned earlier that we call the running 5, keeping warm. And that's the process of how we cultivate someone into a referral source. She emailed me and she was like, I have been keeping this dude warm. She didn't say dude, these are my words, right? I've been keeping this dude warm for 18 months. And I just received my first referral from him worth $620,000, over $500,000.
Yeah.
And I said, so I'm taking the 18 months was worth it. And she was like, I'm just glad I trusted you, because most of the time people would be like, I've done this for 3 weeks. I'm out. Like, that's the problem. And that's why ultimately, do you know why it's so hard to get someone to start referring you? Because of the whole bunch of people out there before you that were just like, I'm going to take you to coffee and then pretend like it's not about me, but it's totally about me. And then after 3 weeks, I'm going to be annoyed at you and drop you. It's why we're all like, okay, I'm not interested in those meetings anymore, because there's not real connection happening. And so what we teach in our running 5, keeping warm, is actually the running 5 is the first part of the framework, is 5 people a month. Okay. Don't you dare reach out to 50 in a week. You can't manage that. I don't care who you are. And if you're a business owner, you certainly can't manage that, because you got a whole business you're running too, right? And like doing the things with your bookkeeping and your accounting and I don't know, taking care of your clients, right? So we call it running 5. Now, the truth is the 5 number is a little obtuse. It has a lot to do with the business, their needs. Do you not need that many referral sources? Do you need a lot more? Do you need them faster than slower, right? But the very, very first person I ever taught this strategy to her number was 5. So I've always just called it the running 5, keeping warm. But we determine like 5 people a month. And then we actually will reach out to them and we will ask for a conversation, but we're going to completely flip the script on what we're going to talk about. And what people underestimate in this process is how much only caring about them and truly caring about them, and there's a difference between pretending and truly caring, and really making the conversation about them and listening for ways that you can help them and truly making it about that and not the desperation you have for someone to refer you, is that is when the real connection can start. But that is one step of an overall process that someone's going to take somebody through. And it's going to start with that framework of like, hey, I'm going to make this about you. And what really turbocharges the process is when you go into every conversation with a how can I help you mentality. And let me tell you, Charles, it's hard for people because there's this little piece of desperation in them that's like, but I need them to refer me. And I'm like, but they won't if they can smell it. And if you can't make this genuine and authentic and an about them, it's never going to happen. So I had a book publisher started in my coaching program in December. She was like, hey, I want to get 20 referrals. So this was December of 2022. She was like, I want to get 20 referrals in 2023. She's like, just 20. Now, granted, every time you decide to do she's a custom book publisher, right? Those are not like $5 deals. No. So like I need 20 referrals in all of 2023. In December of 2022, she kind of started her plan. This was going to go after new people to refer her and to cultivate people that she had already gotten referrals from to get more from. And her first 90 days of this year, she got 15 referrals.
Good night.
She only wanted 20 for the year. Yeah. Right? Like she doesn't even come to that many of our coaching calls anymore because she's like, I'm too busy with my referrals. Right. Oh. Like, so good problem to have. I'll take it all day, twice on Sunday. But the reality of it is she got 15 referrals in her first 90 days. But the real kicker here is 4 of those referrals came from brand new people referring her because she put them through that running 5 keeping warm process that we teach in referring machines. So she was getting referrals that she'd never gotten before from people who've already referred her. And then she's now able to cultivate brand new people to refer her. And she's just kept that going. And she only wanted 20 for the year, and she got 15 in 90 days. But 4 of them from people who've never put their reputation on the line before and referred someone to you, it's a big deal. And she has a strategy now to cultivate that as she needs to.
Did you up your price after she got her 15 and the other one got her $625K?
You know, it's funny. The first time that I had a client literally say to me, I made over $1 million this year in following your referral process, I was like, why am I not taking a percentage? Oh. Like, I should definitely be taking a percentage. But what I know about humans is some will do and some will not. So a percentage business only works when people work the process. But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with like the interior designer I told you about who got that $620,000 referral, right? Like she had to work it and she was willing to do it. And now, because she's amazing, that person will continue to refer to her. And most of those deals will be over $500,000.
Is there some specific language that I should be using instead of, hey, I want to take you to coffee, learn more about you? That sounds like sales breath, and it does not sound like what you teach, but people can sense it. So what's some of the ways I need to warm people up to this? And it doesn't have to be coffee. I get that. Right.
And, the reality of it is we always tell people when they're starting the running 5 to start with people who'll take your call. Like just if there are people in your network that'll just be like, yeah, we haven't caught up in forever. Let's do it. Those are the people we want to start with because it gets you going and comfortable in the process. Right. And the truth is you're not going to talk about your business and you're not going to talk about referrals at all. And those first interactions, like there's certain things we're going to teach our clients to do that's going to set them apart from everybody else who's like, let's go have coffee. And really, I'm going to pretend to ask you a couple questions and make sure I talk 35 minutes about myself. We don't do it that way. And some people have to unlearn all the bad habits that they have. Sure. And some people are like, oh my gosh, I could have used this like 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago because this feels right to me. But for us, we always tell folks is that this is how I kind of tell folks I want you to do it. I want you to start with people who know you and would not screen your phone call.
So I'm gonna get started. Let's say I know this independent agent in Florida, insurance agent. Let's call him Pete Podgy because that's his name. And I'm going to reach out. I'm going to send him this direct clip, tell him not to listen to the referral part. So I reach out to Pete. I do want to catch up with him. Great dude. I haven't talked to him in forever. So, hey man, let's catch up. First meeting, just listen to him, tell him what I've been up to. If he mentions something where I can be of help. Now, do I say, well, just let me know how I can be of help? Or do I pick something specific that he says, hey dude, that thing you're trying to work on or the LinkedIn piece you can't figure out that I know, do I just jump in and offer to help or do I make it generic?
I think it depends on how the conversation goes.
Okay.
Right. I mean, how this conversation is going to unfold has a lot to do with how the conversation starts and how it gets going. Right. And the goal here is it's about you asking questions and then you shutting up and listening. I mean, it really does come down to like, what is going on in Pete's world? What are the things that Pete is dealing with? Right. And some of it could just be catching up on life. And here's the thing about Pete. I don't even know Pete, but I can guess that Pete is a normal human. I mean, maybe he is not,
We're about,
but
yeah, I'm
let's
going to
assume
make
he
him
is.
part of your center of influence.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's assume Pete is normal.
Yep.
Right. And most of the time when you're asking somebody about them and asking like, hey, how's work going? Or what's new? Or
Sure.
you're like, because here's the thing, Pete knows you. It's going to feel genuine. It's not going to feel like I've never met you before. And now you're just asking me how business is. We don't ever start there. So when you're starting with somebody that you know, right, the conversation is just, it's about Pete. And usually because Pete's a normal human, he's probably going to ask some questions of you too, because
Sure.
that's typically how a conversation goes.
That's right.
And you'll have an opportunity to talk about your world. But the goal is to always put it back with Pete. Like you're trying to re-engage a relationship. You're trying to restart a relationship, right? And then from there, right, the process unfolds a little bit differently. But what people miss is that they're trying to force something to happen in that conversation. Stop trying to force it. Have your questions ready. What questions do you want to ask? Right? For people who like this stuff makes them really uncomfortable, I'm like, you should have a solid 3 to 5 questions that you can just pull out when there's an awkward silence. And it better not be about the weather. So when we're thinking about what that looks like, it really just depends on your comfort level, right? My guess is if you know Pete well, you guys can have a whole 20, 30, 45-minute conversation. And it could just feel like, hey, we were shooting the you know what, right? But the truth is you're re-engaging on that personal level and you're listening. Your questions are based around you listening. Like there's been so many times I've gotten off calls with people and the way I know to help them has nothing to do with business. But I'm like, oh, I am totally sending them that parenting book I read.
Sure.
Right? It's totally different things because we're going to talk about stuff. And so you have to be willing to look at it and think about it in that way. Because here's the thing. You know you're having a conversation with Pete because you want him to refer you. But you can't actually go into that conversation with Pete with the idea that at some point in the future he's going to refer you. That's the hope. That's the goal. That we recognize that's the objective, but it's really got to be your secondary objective. Your primary objective really has got to be, I'm going to restart a relationship with Pete and see where this goes, but I'm going to do it by focusing on Pete. And I don't care how long it takes. Now, we care if it takes years and years. You're allowed to care, but you're not allowed to care if it takes less than 6 months or a year.
That's right.
Because you don't know what Pete's has going on.
So I'm going to refer Pete to How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. Got a teen book of the same title. Good stuff. And in 6 to 12 months, or in some cases 18, if I'm doing this right, and it's Pete, and it's probably not just 5, we're starting with 5, and we may expand it a little bit.
Well, it's 5 every month. So you're going to add to that pretty quickly.
So in a year, we're sitting at 60, and the first half of those are very warmed up. We've rekindled an old relationship in some cases, and I'm just being a good guy and dropping little bits and language in here and there. And at some point, this is where some of the referrals start kicking in, and then you start rolling it into long term. So we're getting kind of close to the end of the time here. But one thing I do want to ask, and especially if we're talking about doing more by doing less, is there like a specific software or kind of, I mean, me trying to track all this on a spreadsheet is doable, but do you have like some toys that you use that you recommend folks buy into?
Yeah, so I don't recommend any specific software. I find that when I come to the table with a client and I'm like, okay, you're going to do all this stuff, and then now you need to go also invest in XYZ CRM or XYZ software. It's like, wait, what? And I hate technology. So that's like the last thing I really want to do. Maybe in the future, I'll recommend something different.
AI bots are dead.
Right. Yeah. When all that stuff goes to its early grave like it deserves. Yeah. And we go back to, I don't know, just being normal, good humans. But the idea there is that I typically will have you build it on a spreadsheet, but eventually people will move it off of that into whatever CRM they're using or whatever calendar appointment thing that they're using. And there's ways that we talk about taking that and putting it into whatever system you use. So we're all about, let's customize what you have. Let's not add another system or another software to it. We think that's how we help people do less and still get results. But this strategy we're talking about, of all the 19 strategies that I teach, this strategy we've been talking about, referring machines with the running 5, keeping warm, it is the heaviest one, the heaviest lift. It does have the heaviest lift. meaning it takes more time than any of the other ones. Some of them we can build out a plan, know we're doing something so many times a year, and when we're not doing something, we're not doing something. And then we do it when the plan tells us to. This one's a little bit more of a cultivation, but that's because you're trying to get people to refer you who've never done it before. So it takes a little bit of a different type of work. If you have people referring you, the way I help you do less is by starting you on a totally different strategy than the one we've been talking about. And that is build it. Parts of it you can automate, parts of it you can't. You can also delegate parts of it, and then just making sure you're following that process.
Ooh, I like how you went into all of the doing more by doing less. So humor me, we're going to make a quick transition, put you on the spot. Is there something right now that you should be personally doing less of?
Personally doing less. Oh yeah. 8th grade homework.
How old are your boys now?
So the boys are sophomores and my daughter is 8th grade. So the boys are 15 and the nephew is one of my boys. He's about to turn 16. Our biological son just turned 15, but they're both sophomores. I don't help them with homework because I don't even understand what they're learning. But my 8th grader, my daughter, she is 13. And yeah, that I'm like, I don't want to talk about 8th grade science. That stuff is awful.
Yes, I agree. We're right there with you, 14, 12, and 10. So we're in the mix. So if you're doing less cosines and fractions and social studies, what will that let you do more of?
Right. Netflix, baby. No, I'm just kidding. You know what for me is that I've been on a journey for probably the last couple of years. We were talking about this before you even hit record, of changing the model of my business to serve not only my clients at where they get their best results, but where I have the most energy when I show up. So I did this massive model shift back in 2021, and it actually has freed up a ton of time, so much so that I had one of my best months in my coaching program in August while also having back surgery and was out of commission for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so, yeah, I mean, you just really, I mean, that's where you're like, oh, this actually works with how this is supposed to work. But so for me, it's not like I'm ever looking to do less. As a former productivity coach, I have amazing control over certain things in my life, like the family calendar, communication channels. My email inbox is typically at 0 every day when I go home. So for that perspective, I think I'm an unusual person to ask that question to. But you know what I really should be doing more of is finishing my second book, which has been hanging over my head for far too long. And it's embarrassing to say how long ago it should have been written and published. But that's what doing less 8th grade homework should and would be giving me more time to finish book number 2.
Fantastic. I can't wait to read it. So tell us, Stacey, how can somebody get in touch with you and find you?
Yep. So the website is always a great home base. It's my full name, StaceyBrownRandall.com, and Stacey has an E. But we have a book that's available wherever books are sold, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. There's a link in that book that'll actually send you to a whole bunch of resources to help you set up some of the things we've talked about. So definitely check out the book. You got to buy the book to get the link, to get the free resources. And then if people are listening to your podcast, they're probably podcast listeners. So my podcast is Roadmap to Referrals, and add that to your queue of upcoming episodes.
Subscribe, folks. Learn how to get referrals without asking. Stacey, thank you for coming and hanging out with us today.
Thanks for having me, Charles.
All right. Have fun doing social studies. Wait. Don't run off just yet. Do me a big favor, hit the little plus sign to subscribe, scroll down wherever you are, and leave a very honest 5-star review and tell other people why they should be listening. And if you don't, an angel may in fact lose its wings. True story. Have a great day.